Hey, good afternoon. The evaluation committee meeting for RFP 232445, the Progressive Design Build Services for the One Water South Wastewater Conveyance and Treatment Project will be held in part by means of communications media technology. Active participation will be for committee members and advisors only, and provisions have been made for any member of the public desiring to have access to view the meeting. My name is Sybil Tucker. I am the procurement analyst for this project. For the record, this meeting is being recorded and has been publicly noticed. At this time, I will ask each committee member to introduce themselves for the record. And again, we'll begin with the committee chair.
Tom Mamet, Water Resources Department, Technical Services Division Director.
Isaiah Shapiro, Wastewater Operations Division Process Engineer.
Catherine McAuliffe, Section Manager, Utility Design.
Luke Mulford, Utility Design Team.
Chris Jones, Infrastructure Maintenance. Thomas Black, Section Manager, Systems Reliability Division.
Good afternoon, Robert Sutherland, Systems Reliability Division Director.
Okay, we have our advisors on virtually. I will call your name and you can introduce yourself. Dean.
Good afternoon, Dean Del Grosso with Systems Reliability Division, Mechanical and Maintenance.
Frank.
Good afternoon, Frank Fulgham with Environmental Services.
Jeffrey.
Jeff Greenwell with Environmental Services.
Ken.
Good afternoon, Ken Jones, Director of the county's Minority Small Business Enterprise Program.
Kim.
Kim Rogers, Engineer with Technical Services Division.
London. Okay, so we do have London Womack as an advisor as well. She is currently not on at the moment. We also have, okay, London, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Yes, London Womack, Hillsborough County Plant Operations. I guess I was on the wrong. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And in the room, we do have some other county staff members. If we can just have you introduce yourself just for the record.
Lizette Mora, Water Resources Department.
Scott Stromer, Government Services.
Lisa Ray, Water Resources Department.
Thank you. Okay, we are now entering the discussion and scoring, possible scoring meeting scheduled for 2:15. On January the 8th, the committee met and had preliminary discussions regarding the 3 proposals received from the following companies: Garney Companies, Inc., Kiewit Water Facilities, Florida Company, and Sunt Construction Company. During the discussions, the committee decided to request oral interviews from all 3 proposers and defer scoring until after the interviews were completed. Oral interviews were held earlier today and are now complete. And the committee will now discuss and possibly score the proposals and interviews collectively based on the following criteria. Criteria 1, the Progressive Design Builders project team structure. Criteria 2, the Progressive Design Builders team, key staff, ability and experience. Criteria 3, the Progressive Design Builders team experience with similar relevant projects. Criteria 4, the Progressive Design Builders approach to meet project objectives. There was also a possibility to receive the DMWBE bonus points. Please make sure your audio is muted for those that are viewing. And there was also a financial capability and legal compliance component, which would be either a pass or fail. So I'm sorry. The committee will discuss and decide collectively if they are prepared to score the proposals and interviews today, or if additional time is needed. The committee chooses to score the proposals and interviews today. I will record and verify the scores at the conclusion of the discussion and scoring, and the proposals will be ranked accordingly. But with that, at this time, I will turn the meeting over to the committee chair, Tom Mamet, to begin the discussion. Committee members, please remember to state your name prior to speaking so that we are clear on who's speaking.
Thanks, Sybil.
Mhm.
Right, so we've heard all of our, hopefully questions have been answered, didn't get answered. We all sure taking time to go through the packages additionally. What I hope to do, maybe we could go through with each firm, go through each of the criteria, have discussion, and I guess we're gonna need to make a decision if we can come with some scoring consensus today. If not, I think there has been additional time scheduled for tomorrow, if it takes that long, but I hope is that we'll get through as far as we can today. We'll just see where we're going at the end of it. So perhaps we could start with scoring. We're just gonna go off that board and we did before. We start with scoring. First criteria, we could go through an additional discussion we would like to have. Would you guys like to go through all the questions first? And then come back to discuss scoring, or would you like to talk about scoring as we go?
And this is Chris, I would, way my mind works, is I would want to focus on the criteria where they landed, then, or the scores afterwards.
Okay. So perhaps we talk about which, at which level we saw them meeting or not meeting.
Yep.
Yeah. Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Yes. Great. All right, well, let's start with Garney. We can start with the first criteria, which is it's the progressive design builders project team structure has a total scoring value of 20. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 different levels of scoring. All right.
Well, I would certainly place them in the upper 11 to 20. I think they're fully responsive in their requirements of the section. They had good narratives.
Yeah, I found the organization chart clear. I found it was efficient and with a balance of not too many people, not too few. You know, they had brought out certain highlights in their narrative for their team that I thought were helpful to understand. I would disagree with you.
And this is Chris, I agree, they were fully responsive, but I felt that, yeah, they hit on all the criteria that was required. They highlighted some of the detail, but I felt like I was left wanting more detail. They kind of glossed over the details portion of it. Yeah, the org chart, that to me was fine, and it was just wanting more information, wanting more detail within the scope of what they were asked to provide. I think they highlighted it, but they didn't dive into it.
Especially, are you feeling that it's warrants the next level?
No, I think
that
it's the response, and I think it's on that 11 to 20 level on the scoring guideline, but I don't think it's at the absolute top because there was some details that I felt like weren't explained or enough explanation with the detail.
This is Rob Sullivan. I understand where Chris is coming from, and I did feel a little bit of that as well, but I do agree with Tom that they presented well in the structure as well, so I do believe they belong in that.
It's Catherine. Yeah, I had written them as in the top level. The original presentations that they that they gave us the paperwork, was thorough, and then the verbal presentation. Founded on that, so they're in the top tier.
People said that, I agree, they're fully responsible for fully responsive for criteria 1. As outlined in RFP section 4.2, the minimum requirements for provide written overview of the contractual structure of the team. Organizational charge, they obviously provided that, and described the team structure management for both pre-con and construction, which they did, and we're expanding upon that today. Also, their plan to deliver the project and key personnel involved, as well as showing map location of where everyone's located. So, according to those requirements, they were responsive.
And this is TJ, I would say I would agree with that, in the less than 20 category, especially having a key personnel locally located and working on some similar projects that were laid out in that category.
Okay. It sounds like for this first criteria, we want them to be in that top tier, okay? Unless there's any additional discussion on moving the next criteria.
We're gonna go one through every criteria, see where they rank it. And
That's what I thought.
okay, no, that's fine.
Any additional discussion on this one? All right, so criteria 2. Never mind, I'll read it this first time too. Progressive design builders, project team, key staff, relevant experience. Next point value 20, and give 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different levels of scoring. The highest indicating exceeding the minimums. Second highest being totally responsive to the requirements. And then below that, we partial means.
I went through it and I found the same thing that they exceeded, which was there on the top. I didn't see any. Looked to me like they made all the criteria from the top.
Yeah, this is Chris. I agree. I think they exceeded all the minimal requirements and they highlighted most, if not all, of the preferences as well. So I would agree that they were in the 16 to 20 score. This is Robert Sutherland. I agree with that. It's TJ. I agree with that statement.
Criteria 2 for Arnie. Yeah. For the RFP, the minimum criteria were to provide 3 similar projects for each of the team members, as well as summarizing % of time dedicated to the project during pre-con and construction. So they, like most teams, provided that breakdown of time for each team member.
Yeah, this is Catherine, I agree. The 16 to 20.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I felt like they didn't see the minimums, quite a bit of the preferences. I concur with the any additional discussion?
With that.
All right, criteria 3, progressive design builders team experience and similar relevant projects. And the maximum point value of 40. We have 5 different levels of scoring. Again, the highest level exceeds the minimums, and then it's most of the preferences, etc. The second level would be fully responsive to the requirements.
Yeah, I would rank them up top 2 as well.
requirements and preferences and what's things we need on.
This says as, I think the minimum requirements have been met with this proposal, which include at least one complex progressive design build water wastewater project, at least 2 projects constructing an advanced wastewater treatment plant with the capacity at least 10 MTD. For them, that I think Northwest applies, that was a pretty large expansion. And then for the wastewater pump station, at least 2 pump stations, at least 20 MTD. That, and then the last one, 2 projects, pipelines at least 5 mile long, at least 36 inch diameter. Chief Alders requirement.
Yes, this is Chris. I agree they should be placed in the 26 to 40 score range. They did meet the minimal requirements, and they highlighted most, if not all, of the preferences as well.
TJ, I agree with that. They definitely check the boxes for most of the requirements, meet 26 to 40 categories.
This is Robert Sullivan. I'm going to agree with that as well. We've got all the requirements of the 26 to 40 category. I also thought Northwest applied in the pump station as well. So
This is as I went through each of those criteria, looking first, did they meet the minimum? And this is the process I use for all 3. So like first, did they meet the minimums, and then look at the preferences, if they hit on the preferences. I found for Garney, they met and exceeded many of the minimums. And then I found with the preferences, they hit on quite a few preferences. We may want to circle back around. I'll do it in more detail once we get to the first 3 firms. We need to be doing that in all the criteria. But I do agree. I feel like they do need the 26 to 40 level. And don't feel like anybody's getting rushed through this conversation. I know we all have lots of notes, lots of places. So I understand it takes time to get your place in your notes. So I just want to make sure everybody understands we've got time, how long it takes to get through this. And you'll see me doing the same thing. I'm going to be jumping between handwritten notes, computer taking notes.
And just to piggyback off of Tom, again, you don't have to feel rushed. We do have time designated for tomorrow if you so feel like you need additional time to review and discuss. Score. Mhm.
Now, I believe we heard from everyone, sound like we had consensus on this one.
Yeah, yes.
And we'll move on to the 4th criteria. Progressive design builders approach to meet project objectives. 20-point value. We've had 4 different levels for this criteria. Highest level being fully responsive, having some superior understanding, perspectives. I'm not going to read it all, but it does see it there. The 2nd level being under that, which would have a proposer with good understanding, addresses the majority of project objectives.
This is Catherine. I had listed Garney as 11, in the highest range. I thought they were responded. And project scope and specific information.
just says agree. As outlined in the RFP, the requirement for the written overview describing their approach to meet the project objectives. Incorporating project management, collaboration, project control, project health and safety. Also providing the conceptual level schedule to completion. Also discussing highest risks and mitigate those potential risks. That's fully responsive to the folks in there.
This is Chris, I agree with the scoring being in the 11 to 20 range. I felt like they were really responsive. I agree. TJ, I agree with that. What a balanced approach you can meet all these victims.
Robert Sullivan, I concur as well, 11 to 20 range as well.
This is Tom. I concur. I saw a lot of, not just fully response, but it did look like they had a very firm grasp on understanding the scope of objectives.
Was that your last criteria
That's the last criteria for
for
Guardian.
Garney? Okay, so, just at this time, we will like to allow Ken to provide, just some, comments about the DMV WBE. Ken?
Thank you, Sybil. Again, Ken Jones, the county's MBE and SBE program. One of the objectives of the project is utilization of MBE firms associated with the goal for utilization on this project, and that goal is 14%. And while I'm not a scorer, I did have the ability to ask each presenter that same question: what is their strategy to meet or exceed the project objective for utilization of MBE firms? In their response, Garney did, of course, answer the question. Some of my observations about their response was I would have liked more detail of their plan. A good portion of their answer was referencing their completion of the Northwest project and exceeding the goal, which was a good reference, but I felt that was kind of a generic answer. I did appreciate their commitment to conduct outreach to identify and be able to utilize minority firms on this project. So those were just my short comments and observations. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll proceed.
Okay. We'll go to our second proposer, Kiewit. We'll start with criteria 1 again. I'm not going to reread them all. So I'll be happy to offer some of my observations, reviewing their proposal. They did cover, I feel like, all the things that were needed. I think this had a little bit of concern with just, it seemed like a larger group proposed. In other words, and maybe it's just a matter of they're sharing with us, not just the key personnel, but the depth of some of their other personnel. But the way it was organized, it was close but not quite as efficient as some of the other proposers. But still met, I think, the goal that we're looking for. Did find that there's some balancing that's needed between local forces available, particularly when it comes to the construction side, local forces that may be available versus what you may have to bring in from outside. Seemed like the Kiewit proposal mentioned a little bit more than the others. I think you can learn them some of that support. So not to say that that's good or bad, just an observation.
Did you, say right?
I feel like they were still fully responsive to our requirements.
I agree.
I felt like they were,
I think they were in the top tier. Of being responsible.
Fully responsible.
Yeah, I agree. That's it. And meet that category.
This is Robert Stars meeting the requirements in that category. Yes, that would be classic.
This, Chris, I agree with scoring them in the 11 to 20 range. I do have some further discussion options when we actually put a score to it. I think they were fully responsive on the minimum requirements, but there were a number of preferences that they did not meet.
super. If you have additional comment,
Good.
no,
we're good.
Luke?
Yeah, we all agree.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so criteria 2, progressive design builders, project team, key staff relevant experience.
It's section 2, right?
Yeah, section
Yeah,
2, criteria 2, this is reviewing the team's resumes and staff experience.
Yeah, I have been top tier ranking in the top tier, but they did miss the resume. On the lead. It's not. Dave Wilcox.
This is David Wilcox.
Yeah. Someone else pointed that out too. Say it again, please. David Wilcox, he's one of the leads. He was in here in the interview. His resume was left out. Oh, not sure by accident.
There was a note, this is an RFP about, I believe, residents that were missing. Would be.
I believe it asked for 20, up to 20 resumes to be submitted. We did specify certain key positions that they must submit resumes. And then the others were really left up to their discretion to decide who were key
Right.
to submit.
It says it here, identify an organizational chart for which a resume was not, for each key team member identified an organizational chart for which the resume was not provided, include a brief written overview for this, that are similar and relevant experience.
But if the pipeline conveyance design lead was one of our requirements to have a resume. So I'm looking at it, this is Chris, I'm looking at it from perspective that they didn't exceed the minimum requirements because that was one of the reasons is that missing. So I looked at it as actually not them. And down below that threshold of 16 to 20. But 11 to 15 also says fully responsive to the requirement. I don't know, splitting hairs on it, they're fully responsive. Or it's partially meets requirements. And I found the proposal where they would point to Dave Wilcox as the design lead for the pipeline. And also reference Philip Lightman as the lead, and Philip actually had a resume, but yeah, several different times in my work article called out Dave Wilcox, and actually he was the one here in person today as the lead. And somebody with 40 years experience, thank you about a resume, especially if that's one of the people you're promoting that has a working relationship with Hillsborough County.
Let's see, key technical leads include wastewater treatment plant design lead, wastewater process lead, pipeline conveyance design lead. Any key technical lead may be submitted if the total number does not exceed. These are submittal requirements to assess criteria 2. Pipeline design.
It's the design lead, I'm sure that some of these projects may come along from his experience. Think it falls on.
If he's a design lead and they don't have his, I didn't catch that they didn't have his resume, then it would drop them to 11 to 12. Because they don't have any. Steve Schaefer.
For guarantee, someone else at our last discussion on this out there. But you didn't find the resume. No, no.
Yeah, it's
It's not in the way that's. Double check.
He considered that partially or fully responsible to the requirements.
It was, that was 2. I had it down to 11 fully, but I don't know. And this one, the design proposal, and project manager, reconstructing and construction and design and finish. Experience of the motion.
Right, pick up down the thing because it says key personal has above average level of collective experience, meeting minimal experience requirements. If you don't have a resume for you, it's not going to know that you have. Hopefully not able to make that call.
was there, I did not see it. Besides the resumes, there were some short summaries.
It was on the short summary.
Is this in the short summary?
Yeah.
So they chose, instead of showing a resume, it showed a short summary. Part of key personnel. Well, looking at the different levels, they look at level, is between 11 and 15, says fully responsive to requirements. Key personnel have above average level of collective experience and meet the minimum experience requirements. Proposed progressive design build project manager, pre-construction manager, construction manager, and design manager's experience includes most or all of the experience preferences. And then it goes on to say some of the key personnel project experience similar and relevant to the water project. So I guess I would interpret that he showed up as a key, but he didn't end up with the he didn't end up with a resume. I think I maybe they tried to share some of the experience in a short. The level below that is described as partial use requirements exception. Key personnel have above average level of collective experience. Some of the key personnel project experience is similar and relevant to the water project. So it says some of the key personnel do not have active indicators to deliver.
He's got adequate time.
Yes,
I feel like
yeah, I know we're fully responsible.
Yeah, and I feel like we have to be, we need to make sure they meet the minimums, but also we have to kind of treat it holistically in this section.
And this, Chris, my interpretation of it, it's not a partial means, but it is, I was agree trying to get around the fully, but with guideline of partially means in the 6 to 10, I don't see that as their overall score.
And this, Tom, I would agree with you, Chris, that
That's
11 to 15, I feel like the right.
Okay. Agree, I would agree. I agree.
Actually, I had written that in just based on their written report, that 11 to 15.
I think I heard agree with everyone. We'll move on to the next criteria. Criteria 3. This is for Hewitt.
Before we talk about what box they land in, I want to talk about what, when we look at, one of the things that sticks out is key personnel or team members have successfully completed similar projects together. They actually do, that's a big focus of this particular
Section 40,
section.
section 3.
This is 3. And if you look at the matrix they submitted on page 89 of their proposal, it doesn't show that they've worked on any projects together. Yeah, you got a few people from Kiva that have worked together, people from AECom that have worked on projects together, but the two firms have not worked on any projects together, or the two
81
primary.
or 81.
Well, so mine's PDF numbers, not actual.
Oh, okay.
So we printed it.
Okay.
This is TJ, this is one of the notes I had, is not many projects obtaining together at all, even though they've worked.
And my thoughts were based on the scoring and all, looking at the 16 to 25, fully responsive to the requirements. But as you go further into it, the thing that stood out to me was, from a preference standpoint, some key personnel or team members have successfully completed similar projects together. In order to move them to the 26 to 40, it had to have most key personnel or team members have completed similar projects together. And based on their matrix, I can't say most. I can't make an argument for some, but
This is Tom. As I went through the minimum criteria and the preferences, one of the things I also picked up on to add to what you're saying is I didn't see any of these out of the 14 projects they submitted. I didn't see anywhere the lead constructor and lead designer on that project. So kind of what you're saying, Chris, but there's a little bit of a struggle demonstrating that the student have teamed together with successful concluding current projects.
and I think during the interviews and potentially presentation today, they had mentioned their goal was to pick the best that they had. And put them forth, not people that have worked together. Even knowing that's what the criteria looking for from a preference standpoint. So that to me, I don't know if I can truly say I agree with that's the best they have, but they've never worked together. So it may be best in a specific area, but from a team collaboration standpoint of the collective team, I want some continuity there.
They admitted they just started. They just got to know each other through pursuit, that they haven't successfully worked together on projects, so I think that they're not gonna exceed the minimum required. I think that requirement, that I agree with you, that they would notch down to the next level.
And I don't remember if they verbally, on the Prospect Lake. So that was brought up, that it was mentioned, the draft proposal. Was that a collaboration between both? I know they couldn't use it as a project. I don't remember.
Let me see which, I have project numbers, I'll go back and look at which number that is.
I think it's listed as 114, it wasn't, but I know it was, I saw it, something that we had asked about and it was discussed.
The second activity.
When that throw up, it wasn't finished. I think probably.
I raised the question about that project. It was mentioned in several locations. But it was a project that was still not complete. Still
Oh, yeah.
listed as an active project.
Staffing question, or whether they could. They're still working on that.
And they answered my staffing question.
Correct, I don't think that AECom was on that project. I don't,
No,
I didn't have a note.
I did not have a note that they were. This, now, I do agree that. Yes, I think it's in the category of 16 to 25.
Okay, I agree. Well,
Agreed. Agreed.
What? I'm missing out.
the category which they should be. Yeah, 16.5.
Yes. I agree. This is keyword.
He was applicable. There's a keyword on criteria 30. Okay, great. Okay. Go to criteria 4. Approach. Keyword. Again, the highest level is fully responsive to requirements, proposer is superior understanding. Still addresses all project objectives, most preferences. Etc. A little below that is proposer has good understanding, project open objectives. Will address the majority, project objectives, some of the preferences. Criteria 4.
Yeah, criteria 4. I had mostly fully responsive. I questions about some of the alternatives and things like that, but I think they fully responsive.
I had them listed as an 11, the top range.
11 and 1.
Yeah.
This is TJ. I know they listed an innovative approach in British Columbia, but I think it was still under trial. Intensification.
Yeah,
But that. But I think they rated in 11 to 20 category.
I'll agree on the 11 and 20. I think they were. responsive to the requirements.
Agreed. This time I would agree. Generally felt like this particular approach that they wrote offered quite a few creative ideas that we may or may not want to consider. Part of that may be that because these, both AECOM, even through the large national and international firms. And what kind of going back to what you mentioned, that they're pulling their experts from all over the world possibly. So I think they are coming with ideas, putting it here that maybe we have considered before, maybe we haven't. So that I think they did certainly capture that part of it very well. I do have some reservations about some of the other parts there, but I do feel like it does fully responsive.
Yeah.
Read it for everyone there, right? Right.
Did everyone provide comment?
Everybody, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Ken, at this time, if you want to give your comments for Kiewit.
Thank you. Again, for our audience, more so than the evaluation panel, Ken Jones, Director of the county's MBE and SBE office. I did have the ability and opportunity to ask each presenter the same question as it relates to one of the project objectives, which is to meet the requirements of the county's MBE program and the associated goal for utilization of MBE firms on this project. And that question was, what is your strategy to meet or exceed the project objective for utilization of MBE firms? Kiewit's response, they mentioned now in their proposal, phase one, they exceeded the 10%, and they're working with a couple of firms to help conduct some outreach to identify minority firms to partner with. They were pretty detailed and specific in the number of scopes of work that they've identified that are opportunities based on availability of minority firms to participate. And that evaluation also showed there were over 400 firms that were potential partners on the project. I appreciated their response and the detail behind their response. That's my brief comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Oh,
Okay, let's move to the third proposal, son. Start with criteria one, the project structure.
And this is Chris, I had them in the fully responsive, so in the 11 to 20 range. I think they were responsive to all the requirements, minimum requirements, and for the most part, all the preferences. I know as far as personnel located in Tampa Bay Regional Partnership area, we had a couple outside the area, a couple were in the Miami area. I'd say one may have been Georgia or South Carolina. I have to go back and look at where he was, but for the most part, they're in the local area, North Florida.
Many key personnel and most of the project team have offices, they just say have offices located in.
I would say the main key person that's not in the areas in Miami.
Right,
That was Marie. Yeah.
but I still think the criteria for 11 to 20, so I agree.
Would agree as well. 11 to 20. Okay, criteria two, key staff relevant experience.
TJ, I thought they definitely met the 16 to 20 criteria. Experience on large projects, such as this one. This is Luke, I agree. Great.
This is Catherine, I agree.
Agree. Isaiah.
This is Tom. I had some concern with that I expressed in a previous discussion regarding the project manager, but I think some of that was still in today with the interview clarification for the offer. I see that there is adequate experience there. So, more confident on that. There's still a few places where maybe some weaknesses, but overall, I agree with you guys. See the minimum requirements.
Yes, I agree with that.
You heard from everyone, yes? That one?
Yes.
All right. Criteria 3. Similar relevant projects.
We go back to that same statement. This is Isaiah, most key personnel or team members, that's what we need to more project together, I think. This team, the Sun Chronicle team hasn't fully demonstrated that.
So, and this person looking at that, I don't think that it can. The collective team, I think they showed a better job of the multiple teams working together. But the two prime firms locally, the two there was the biggest heartburn I had. The others, I think they did a better job showing where they had worked on projects together. But from the Brown and Caldwell standpoint, I know they continue to highlight they've been working on this for 2+ years, so they've got 2+ years to work together. They understand each other, but I think it's still when you start looking at splitting hairs as to most or all or some scoring criteria. I felt like they, more so than not, they have work experience together as a collective team, but the two at the top for the concerns from me.
I think this TJ, they'd say 4 years, Brian Caldwell.
They work both of you, both of you today.
This Tom, yeah, as I went through the criteria, again, one of our preferences was lead constructor, lead designer in same roles. Son. Brown Caldwell, and when I looked across their 14 projects, Project 11 and Project 14 were the only two I saw where they had shown that, at least for the firms. The only concern I had here was Project 11 was rather an old project at 16 years old, and Project 14 was an active project. Not yet complete. So, yes, to me, it does raise a little bit of question, I think I'm comfortable they can work together. It's just, I don't see quite as much of a track record. It's gonna be proposed.
Going back to what's how it's spelled out, it's most key personnel or some key personnel. But I think they're either in the 16 to 25 or 26 to 40 scoring range. So are we looking at some of that and then the two prime?
I guess, one of the other criteria that I was reviewing and I'd like to hear what other people's thoughts were. In the minimum requirements, we've mentioned the lead constructor. We've constructed the pump stations at least 20 MGD. We struggled to find that in the 14 projects. If they had listed, did I miss something? Or did anybody know?
Treatment facility, pump station, the MGD on project 14.
That was still.
That's not done.
So, and Tom, I struggled with that same one and
Southwest.
I don't know how many times I read through it, but there were 20, I think it was a 20 MTD booster station, that was the wastewater pump station on. Go back, I'll find the project.
Okay.
I have a designing wastewater pump station with deep firm at least 20, and they had Marshall big pump station.
Marshall is 25.
The project 9 was 150.
And at Kansas, Georgia, which was the NBR water plant, they had a pump station there at 33, so it's kind of.
Project numbers then?
8 and 9 both.
That's not a way, not sure.
That's just.
Just pump
It's
station.
project 11 at the 20 MGD booster pump station.
So they did have
Yeah, and I did
at
pick
least
up,
2 pump
I
stations.
should pick up on some of those, and I guess, so that they meet the minimums and at the prime. At their experience, I was hoping that I would find something that showed me that we constructed.
Well, it got
So-
confusing because in some cases, they were using a reclaimed water pump station or an in-plant pump station. And I think we were intending that to be a lift station.
Yeah, I think-
Wastewater lift station from a collection plant on an in-plant transfer pump station.
Yeah, I think, across the board, we saw some of that.
Yeah. Water plants and everything else.
I know that,
That's
looking at them, it's all of them at the wastewater 20 MTD.
yeah, I think that's it.
And Tom, you mentioned looking at the lead constructor, that's where I was beating my head against the wall, on that. Well, I looked at it from perspective, we're looking at all the primes. None of the other. So we split hairs, they can turn around and bid that work out, and we don't have to qualify that contract in the same manner we're qualifying the contract that was used here. So we use that against them and say, as a collective team, they can do it, but with that structure, they can't, or they didn't provide the project, so that's where I've struggled with that. Looking at it, they've got, and I'll continue to call him Sammy Sam, so I hope he doesn't take offense to it, but they've got, from Sun's perspective, Sam is the construction manager over both. So looking at it from the prime, they have the experience that meets all the minimum requirements for the pipeline, the plant, and the pump station. So with them being over the all the components there, I looked at it as comparing them to the other 2 primes.
And I agree, Chris. It's not to be held against them in terms of whether they meet the minimum. I think you could, it's clearly said you could meet the minimum either from the prime firm or not very, or the constructor.
Right.
That was done. Yeah.
They did. They did.
That's looking at it from that perspective. One more time, I would lean at the 26 to 40. I don't know.
It states most key personnel with whom we have successfully completed similar projects together.
That's what I think they fall a little short.
What's the?
There's a lot of.
What's the?
Yeah.
Most.
Yeah, it looks like,
I'm also, sorry,
um,
I'm gonna also say, using what we learned today in the interviews, there is more of the collaboration and working together. As the projects weren't completed, they couldn't put it in, but that was kind of where I distinguish the presentation and interview that they put forth versus one here, where they basically, no, we have not worked on anything, but they alluded, there's other items that they have worked on, not just this pursuit. And they did attempt to tie all of them together within the proposal, even though they weren't tying. With large projects that are complex like this one, they did tie or showcase some working together, even it was more so a weaker attempt than a complex project.
They did explain how they've been working together, but I guess they haven't completed a lot of projects together that they're currently working, so. Until they're completed, will demonstrate that they're successful, they don't quite fit the criteria.
Now, that from a minimal standpoint, or is that where it's,
If we look at like a team that has more history working together and has demonstrated that success, I think that exceeds the minimum required. Whereas perhaps this team has been working together in recent years, but haven't completed those projects.
but if you look at it from what the criteria says,
everything is
Most.
primary except, everything is primary lead. Instructor, completed 2 projects. Primary lead.
but looking at, we all agree they met the minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the scoring criteria, that's where
There's a seed the minimum. There's a 26-40.
that's where I'd still say that I'm arguing they exceeded based on. Now, I'm not saying the 2 top, they tied together to interview, but if you take the other firms and look at, all right, so they have the St. Pete project, they have pipeline projects and others where all these firms
Yeah.
locally have worked together, right? Western, and some of
Yes.
these people, not just them, but Brown, Caldwell, Plymouth Creed.
Yeah, they had
so
6 people from the design team that worked together
But
and then, yeah.
they show where
Fine.
multiple firms have crossed over and worked together.
Right.
Unlike the Kiewit one where there was 0. Right. So that's where I felt like they're saying they highlighted most of that has happened.
Yeah,
So I think that's above the sum, which is where we place the prior where they showed none. They had collaborated across teams.
This is, when you look across all the minimum requirements, I think they've met all the minimums, and yes, maybe they haven't exceeded all of those, but they've exceeded some of them, for sure. I felt comfortable with that, put them in the 26 to 30 category.
I think I agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, I agree.
yeah,
I agree. I think what Chris, you're saying is they've worked together in different formats as teams, but not as a whole. Whereas Kiewit hasn't really had a lot of local experience working together in those.
So they, even the firms that they teamed with didn't show where they had worked together either. Unlike with this proposal, the firms that they teamed with show where they worked with firms across from them. So this team has a working relationship. There's maybe not progressive design build or particular design manager, They may have not collaborated on a project together, but I'm looking at it, I think most of the others, yeah, have shown that, they work with each other.
Additional discussion, I think I heard everyone.
Yeah, I think everybody can agree to hit that tier.
Criteria 4. Objectives.
I've ranked them at the top.
Is not good. Wait, okay.
This is that they have their ambitious goal of completing or delivering the project early.
Pretty strong.
Yeah.
I agree. And this is Chris, I was, scratching my head on how they would accomplish that in 9 months ahead of schedule. But in listening to their presentation and interview, I don't look at it as being so far fetched. I think they laid out a well thought out plan, and it's something, yeah, we can say that's what they've been focused on, I think maybe ahead of the game because of prior involvement. So,
TJ, especially with the permitting aspect, all that, like delay everything.
Yes.
And they're currently working on, members of the team are currently working on projects in the area and they have knowledge and information.
Yes, I would agree with all of you. And I felt like going through the proposal, I too was concerned about, it's not much realistic. And hearing the clarifications they made on the interview, I'm much more comfortable that it was within the realm of possibilities. Additionally, their approach about bringing the two MGD is very, I'll say skeptical, but I had questions and they answered a lot of that. Interview, getting me much more comfortable that it's, again, within the realm of possibilities for it. So I would agree they fall into the fully responsive superior understanding.
Agree.
Agree. Okay, so that was our fourth criteria.
Okay, so, Ken, if you'll go ahead and provide your comments at this time.
Thank you. Again, Ken Jones, County's MBE office. Had an opportunity to ask each presenter the same question as it relates to how they would meet the county's associated goal for utilization of MBE firms on this project. And the specific question was, what is your strategy to meet or exceed the objective for utilization of MBE firms? This presenter did answer the question. They identified a minority-owned contractor in the local area as a key partner on the project. They identified and referenced in phase 1 their plan to exceed the goal of 10% and their partnership with that previously mentioned minority contractor to identify MBEs. So they answered the question as it was presented to them. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
And this is
Organizing myself.
Chris, I do have a question I wanted to ask Sybil. And it was something that was brought up during the I want to say they talked about in the presentation, as they had been on the interview side with Kiewit, but their outreach to solid waste. You heard the comment there that they went performed outreach to the Hillsborough County Solid Waste team and mentioned that they had talked to them about biosolids composting coming in. due to PFAS. Does that in any way, I don't want to call it, affect the cone of silence, or does the cone of silence only pertain to water resources, or would that expand to solid waste within this project?
Did they mention when they had done
They don't, no, but I kind of, the way I felt is while they were scoping this project, they stopped by and talked to us. I didn't know if they had reached out to you guys or anybody and said, hey, we're looking to do this, or if they stop in it. But now, no date.
it? It wasn't mentioned to me.
Yeah, we can take a look at it, but as a practical matter, funds have the ability to do research. So they can go out and visit and, have conversations. It may not have been about this, they may not have identified it was about this one, or whoever they're talking to doesn't really input some of the process. We can take a look at it and see if that's a concern. But just so you know, that if there is a violation of the code of silence, it removes you from consideration. It is a disqualification. I have no discretion. So if you hear something in your conversations out in the world, but this appears to be kind of benign, but we'll listen. That was key what you said.
Yeah.
So we'll go back and listen and take a look.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so we've been through the three proposers, we've established what scoring level each of them would be at for each of the criteria. At this point, our next step would be to go back through, try and select, find consensus, what score each proposer gets in the criteria. And if you'd like, we could go down through, just like we did before, in the same order, one proposer at a time, go through all the criteria, if you'd like.
Do each section. I think I like to do each
You
section.
mean each criteria?
One across, two across.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
Rank each of the.
And then you get through the criteria for all three proposers and leave the next criteria.
No. Pick criteria one and rank each proposal.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're saying the same thing.
Okay.
You're just saying it's so much better.
Yeah.
Does anyone need?
Oh, you're the official?
No.
So what I'll do is I'll
I don't have any.
I'll start.
going into the each criteria, I'll just recap what level each proposer was at.
Sure.
And then we'll commence discussion for each.
Now, wait, Tom, just a second. Do I need a score sheet? Do we make a copy of it? I don't
So-
have one filled in.
You don't.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Sybil.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sybil?
not a problem.
Yeah, and so we're scoring by consensus.
Yes.
So we come together as a committee to agree to one score, and Sybil will record that for us. Thank you, Sybil. Okay, so if we start back with criteria one, we had Garney, actually all three of them, Garney, Kiewit, and Sunt, all at the top level, 11 to 20 points. So we can start with Garney. Or if you want to open up the discussion process, maybe more.
I think we're nice scores on there, and then you can go from there. I scored Garney as 18. He was 16 and Sun is 17. And it's really because I like the way Garney presented their structure. It's a little more clear to me. 8 Kiewit's was a little more confusing. And Sun's, however, was simplistic and pretty good too. So, I mean, they're very close. They're all. But that's the starting point.
And this, Chris, I actually, scored Darnie at 16 on this because of the detail that I felt they did not give. And they highlighted the, minimum requirements, but did not dive into details. I felt they spent more of, which isn't a major negative, it's come up with a major negative. They spent more energy on them being the local firm. So it would be like, quote unquote, buy American, if you were focused on American products, it was kind of how they were selling. Criteria one, it was, we're local, we've done this before, and they hit on it again in the interview. But, I'm not knocking that piece, but I felt like they focused more on that than they actually focused on expounding on the details of the requirements. They highlighted them, but they didn't do it,
Just time, I felt like, from a organizational standpoint, structure standpoint, I felt like with Garney and Son did the best job. I felt like they're gonna be the most efficient, organizational structure. To, again, hit all the points, but just seemed a little bit more complicated. I recognize this is it's massive work. It's gonna take a lot more people than just what they're presenting to us. And we get that. We all understand. But I felt from a structure standpoint, again, Garney and Son, similar. You bring up a good point, Chris. Garney did spend a lot of time focused on sharing that point that they were local. Those are all good things, but maybe to the detriment of not quite being what they were saying. I was close to those two. I thought he was going to be a little behind the other two.
That's same with me. I felt like it was more, there's really a point difference with some, because I felt like they did a better job explaining the details of both Sun and Garney from the structural standpoint excelled, and then really from Hewitt, they were a step behind.
So how'd you have
So,
it ranked?
is there any additional?
Did you have a number? Let's put a number to it.
6, well, we would have to come up with consensus for each one.
Right, but we come up with a number, then come up with a census, we're like an average. In worst case.
We don't necessarily need to all offer individual scores. We just go with a consensus.
Would we want to rate the highest down to the lowest? No matter which way it goes.
Seems like we're gravitating that way.
Just take it instead of jumping column to column.
Are there any other comments or input that you want to offer here?
I thought Garney and Son did a fantastic job presenting their information, both of the proposal we had today. I had Garney scored just a little bit higher than Son, and I threw Chris regarding Hewitt, and we told him that it was just a little bit more confusing, so. And Garney is still higher for 2, I think Son.
They had Garney higher, but 2 with the proposal itself, but during the discussion, I think it was because I'd spent a lot more time on Garney's, but after the discussion and the questions, it kind of worked. Started over Garney.
I had side rating, the highest, and then Garney with. But it was close, and everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking,
Yeah.
pretty close here.
I wish the Garney's son do it.
I would put a number to it.
What-
So,
Because is it,
People.
but you have to put a number to the project across, but not, the problem is we're going up and down within one column. The other one, we're in one.
We feel like chicken powder.
We don't have to all agree on one, on who's first, second, or third. We have to agree that when we score Garney at the end, what is that number? What is Sun's number? And what is Hewitt's number? And then the next round, then we would add them across.
Yes, yes, I have a number.
Yes, and
And right now,
Luke, numbers
we've
out.
got two up and two down, and there's
Yeah,
three
it
up and
sounds
two
like-
down.
It sounds like we kind of have consensus wondering that he would maybe third in this guy.
Yes.
And so now it's between Garney and Son, do they score equally in this category, or does one score higher than the other?
Yeah, thank you.
And it's gonna be close probably, all the way through these criteria. This is
Yeah.
where we're just gonna have to have these conversations.
I think I heard,
JJ and I said Sun.
pretty, I was in agreement with Sun being. Having the best. Criteria, one of them, the proposal. And then there was three, I don't know if Tom's getting his, I heard three for Garney.
I thought they were equal, so I was doing Garney and Son, I thought they were equal. So,
I could certainly go with equal. I mean, I don't.
I think so.
That
It's like it sounds like they're equal, whatever the number
There's
is.
only 1 point difference.
You're three
Yeah,
up.
me too. I'm
1 point, which one?
Garney, I think Garney.
I think it's Garney higher. And I know Chris, that's how you had it, higher.
opposite.
But looking at it,
I mean, do you have detail?
this,
I didn't have a number, I just said Sun's Garney.
You didn't have
A point, I mean, if we're doing a good point.
Yeah.
Slightly favored. Each vote.
So we got three with Garney higher, three with Sun. And they're all within a point.
Just put a meeting.
Or perhaps we'll put it,
Even. One count.
or there's additional,
the only argument I have.
argument.
Details. I just felt like Sun did a better job of explaining it. But I think both of them
Yeah.
did well on it. I just, that was my distinction between the two.
Yeah, and as I look, this is Tom, as I look across the two and looking back in all of the preferences that we listed. I mean, both of them hit on our preferences. Chris, I think you made mention of it a little earlier, you know. Looking at the key personnel. But both of them, you know, it's a large local presence. They basically have folks here in the Tampa Bay area. And southeast. They all have their branch offices here, you know, so. They both did hit. From what I could see, all the preferences that we were asked for this.
Right.
Whether this is a good or bad, the only additional observation I would add. And said that, Such was a team that mentioned, you know, they have some forces here, but they also have the ability to bring in craft forces. I say that's good, or bad, but they did specifically mention that they have that.
And I would, even though it wasn't discussed, I'd argue that, you probably argue that for all three, being national firms.
I do believe that, Garney's team talked more about bringing a local team in to help maybe, but
Yeah, they talked about having a lot
Rather
of
than-
work in the area that they can.
yeah, they could bring in, which is a good point as well.
Well, that's our preference. Local, but these will go always to national. It's ours big, they're units. They're very, all.
All right, are we, yeah, we have to settle on something.
Yeah.
Are we,
Are they tied?
are we comfortable with the tying the two of them?
Or you
Or
have-
we have to have
We
enough
feel like we're still.
scores.
That might be a consensus.
Play it out and see when we get to the end, if you need to come back.
We need to
I'd
come back.
rather do it across and what comes out.
No, yeah, I mean, go ahead and get the numbers down.
Okay, so, we were to 18 too high, for the two teams. 17.
I had it 18 and 17.
I had 18 and 19, so.
So
Yeah,
that's
maybe
like
we'll-
18, 19.
I would be comfortable with that.
You have to be confident.
What do you have for people?
16.
I had 6, yeah, that.
Yeah, I have 15 and 16, so. If we said 18 for Garney. 18%, 16 for Kiewit.
This,
Is that your consensus?
yes.
Yes,
So 18 for Garney,
18 for Garney. Would you like me to go in alphabetical order?
yes.
18 for Garney. 16 for Kiewit. 18%.
Thank you.
Okay, going to criteria 2. Let me recap. Barney, we felt was at the top level 16 to 20. Kiewit at the second level 11 to 15. And Sunt at the top level 16 to 20.
I would start with some of the comments, that I had on Garney. They didn't show pump station experience for the advanced progressive design build manager with his resume. That was an item. But then they also were confirmed that basically all their key personnel experienced in Florida and a lot of experience with the county.
But they didn't show what?
The conveyance side, we started looking at the progressive design build manager for the conveyance, the pipeline pump station. And a lot of the resume, there was no pump station experience.
Yeah, this is Tom. I saw similar points of weakness. Conveyance, structure manager for pump stations. I didn't see, in addition to what you said, Chris, I didn't see really the full credentials that might normally see for construction manager.
One of our preferences was 10 years experience, and the pipeline construction manager showed 6.
This is now, I will give it that the experience they did show was almost not small. If you look at the So pipeline work they did. Catherine, the ones that, this is Tom again, the ones that, the ones that were a little short on years were, Mr. Pate and Mr. Miller. Both are with the construction side of the.
Okay.
I looked at the resume, not the docs, I can put a dot.
And then once it was the superintendent,
And Pate, PATE.
pipeline improved construction.
On that, they did, on the matrix, they said 10 years, but that was resume shows 6.
Yeah. But he's the construction manager. For the pipeline work. 6 years with the current term.
And what is Robert Bo's conveyance progressive design build manager?
Yeah, that's what I had.
24 years.
It says that, if you go back to your chart,
Have been totally.
so Holtz has the experience in the years. But it's just.
It just wasn't highlighted. on his resume. Yeah, they got some. But the construction manager is project superintendent, they have that here for who's the manager is, and I think Tom hit it on the head too. If you look collectively, that's the last thing on some experience. Yeah, so it's. I feel like from my standpoint, I got to think about something. No.
One of the things I picked up here too, regarding, if you're looking at the team that they proposed, key personnel, if you looked at how many of those were on projects in the next criteria 3, there was a lot of back and forth. So lots of projects were talking about, I'm saying team members being involved in those projects. We just reinforced their capability. I saw, and this is Tom, just to finish that thought, I saw also looking at those projects and they shared in criteria 3. I looked at the key personnel and did the key personnel perform on those projects the same exact role. And I found Garney had quite a few people who were performing, not all of them, but performing in the same exact role on those projects as they're proposing in ours. So yeah, I felt like they did really well.
That I'm at 18. Yeah.
We have Sunt in the same level at 16 to 20. I'm just looking at my notes regarding the references. Similarly, I found Sunt a lot of crossover between the first key personnel they proposed and the 14 projects, and almost as many in the same role as the proposal. Not quite as many, sorry, but almost as. So I wouldn't split hairs over there. There were a few points of weakness I saw with Sunt as well. They cleared up some of that in the interview this morning. or this afternoon for me. There were just a couple places that, with the construction manager, I was looking for his credentials and, was, what you call him, Sammy Sam for short? I couldn't seem to see his credentials on his resume. Maybe someone else maybe.
Yeah,
I think he's demonstrated that he's got that experience, but I was hoping to see.
there were no certifications or credentials tied to that experience. I agree. That's what the pipeline company. I mean, it's in the construction.
He was the overall construction role here.
So. That, and they had, the pump station pipeline construction manager on the resume that showed pump station experience either. So that similar to what I was saw in the Guardian Sun. I think, Tom, you were alluding to it.
Yeah.
Same type of comments, they were.
Yeah.
Basically deemed in the similar areas that we provide a lot of, overall experience.
Between 16 and 20 for the Guardian and 20, yeah, Guardian, so.
I had 18 both.
They're not. 17 for both, 16 for.
Next category.
Yeah.
They were in the
Lower category, yeah.
Yeah, overall, this is Tom, overall for me, he had a few points of weakness on each of them, but I felt like it was pretty comparable.
Absolutely.
So I'm comfortable giving Garnier some. Same squeal.
This is as they out. For this category, I would give Guardian slight edge because of their. How much they work together and locally and their local presence. That gets demonstrated. Cohesiveness. I think they're really good with it. But they're lacking a little bit. I would say. 17.
Would that fall into the, are you adding? Are you falling into this third section here when you talk about working together and all that?
So under the preferences, one of the things we
Is
had still, yeah, this is still criteria too.
Yeah.
But under the preferences, there was a reference to, hey, if you worked on one of these projects you presented in criteria 3. Tell me that you worked on it and what was your role. So if you kind of cross-reference that. See some of that.
Okay, thank you.
This is Tom, you're right, Isaiah, Barney definitely showed more of that local experience, slightly more than any of the other proposers. That I wouldn't be opposed to giving them the credential.
This is Chris. I agree with both Isaiah and Tom on that. They did a decent job of tying criteria to the criteria 3, which was a part of preference.
And 18 for Guardian.
So I believe I'm hearing 18 for Garney, 17 for Sun. And then we still need to discuss who.
I agree on those schools.
Okay, so let's discuss keywords. They're in the next year, 11, 15. Interesting with that. here, you know, just, looking at the team as a whole. They did have a lot of projects as well, where they showed some team members involved, you know, those projects that they shared in criteria 3. But I think one of the things that I didn't see a lot of was they worked together. You know, it was individuals that crossed over, but not necessarily the teams. I think I saw a few more gaps in with the other experience when we were looking at, you know, if they have even Florida experience. In some areas that maybe not as crucial, but in my mind, there are some areas where it's very crucial, particularly if you're talking about, for instance, designing a wastewater treatment plant. It's different here than it is in other parts of the country. Not that it can't be done, but there are certainly things that you learn
Yes.
when you're in the southeast region. So that's why we listed as a preference. I didn't find as many staff that really were meeting those preferences of experience in Florida or experience in the southeast. Part of why I felt like they were even slower, like a step slower too. I also saw a few of their staff. I struggled to find the credentials as well. Not that they didn't have credentials, but I was looking for the credentials for the role that they were playing.
Right.
I had 1, 2, or at least 3 of them. I didn't see credentials that demonstrated they had it for this role. So I felt like perhaps maybe a 13.
And that's the 14. This is TJ, when they talked about bringing basically their subject matter experts in, but I think it's gonna be a new project for them together. But I would say a 13. I agree.
I would go with 15. I mean, they've demonstrated the capability. I think they were missing, especially that resume. That kind of thing. I think, and there's some kind of a gap in who was doing the pipeline. Who is leading that design is project needs to be missing that relevant experience.
Right.
Well, they had the BNR lead out of Canada, and the biosolids lead out of North Carolina, which is not too bad.
So and this is Chris, going back to kind of what Tom was highlighting, but I think it's more than just that one resume that pushed them into this category. They're not tying back to many of the preferences of the others. So if we just said based on that resume, put them in the next range below, but we push them to the ceiling in that range, I don't think we're fully discussing the other elements of it that are missing. They did not tie anything back to criteria 3, the way I understood the proposal. And then you can look at the other aspects of where their experience is, and looking at the relevant projects within that recent 10-year period for some American players. I'd be more inclined, like I think I heard 13 or 14 calls down versus the people that did.
I think I can live with the 14. I'm just looking.
And they also had some of the other items where we looked at, the construction manager for pump station and pipeline didn't have any certifications either. some of the things we did pick one of it, or some are. In addition, he was going to say that they're performing.
Yeah, I just want to give Catherine a little time to, so she's looking at some things, I want to give her some time to look.
What are we at now? What are the scores for keyword?
Sure, so. Kiewit right now, we've only gone through criteria 1,
We're now at 2.
and we're now at 2. So for criteria 1, it Kiewit at 16. For criteria 2, which we're deciding right now, again, they're in this second tier between 11 and 15. Right now, we've tended to say Garney 18, Sun 17,
13, 14, and 15.
between 13, 14, 15 for Kiewit.
I would say keyword's probably 14.
And I think this time, I think between all the discussion, it sounds like that kind of a range, and I would be comfortable. So 14, I think it's in the middle, and I think we've got a majority. Everyone okay with that, or
Great. Was Chris, I agree.
under? Okay, so Sybil, for criteria 2, we have for Garney 18, for Kiewit 14, and for Sunt 17.
Thank you.
Okay, so criteria 3 is the similar relevant projects. Notes, and then I'll give you a recap. Criteria 3, we had established Garney at the top level, 26 to 40. Kiewit at the second level, 16 to 25. And Sunt at the top level, 26 to 40. I know in this criteria, there's a lot of preferences and a lot of information that we had to look at. So I know I personally have a lot of notes to review, but I did find, just starting with Garney alphabetically, I did find that I found where they met all of the minimums, and I felt like they exceeded most of the minimums. When I looked at the minimum criteria, we were looking at either the prime firm or whether it be the constructor or the designer, and looking across the 14 projects. There were always several projects, 3, sometimes 4 projects that seemed to meet that minimum, whether it be for at least a 10 MGD plant, or at least a 20 MGD pump station, or pipelines, pipeline. So I found that they exceeded, in my opinion, minimums in quite a few places. It's clear that several of these projects were aggressive design build. Many of them were other collaborative methods. I flagged that there were a couple that were true greenfield projects I know we had to look closely to,
Colorado plant, they said was a
Yes.
which project number was that?
3.
3, yeah, I flagged that as a true greenfield. I also flagged 13, but although 13 is just active still, it's going away.
I think 8 was greenfield.
When I looked at 8, I have to go back and look at 8. I was looking carefully to make sure it wasn't just an expansion on a field next door, maybe. But I'd have to go back and look at 8 again. I did not flag that as a true greenfield.
They constructed a raw water pump station next to a new reservoir, a water treatment plant, and a high-service pump station.
The water plant.
It is a water. It's still greenfield, that's less.
I think the only reason I maybe didn't flag that as green water plant didn't have the complexity, I guess I was considering for preference, being wastewater influent complications.
Right.
But you're right. It's
So
still
it is
greenfield.
green.
Project in Charlotte, for Charlotte Water. Regional Water Resource Recovery Facility. 93 field.
Which project number?
They're 13.
think
I
we
did
said-
flag that as greenfield.
It's a 15 MGD, expandable to 45 MGD. Project. It was, Hazen, the designer, Barney was the contractor. Design build. Design build process. The rest of the design was funky. Yeah, so they labeled it as a free field. 25 MGD. Yes, it's expandable to 25 MGD.
Yeah, and then they even 12, they consider probably even build.
It's not on the key projects, but I think on the resume, as Hazen mentioned, their involvement with the Hamlin rebuild, it doesn't quite. Yeah, it doesn't meet the requirements per gallon, but it's relative experience.
Top is a TJ. I thought they had mentioned Quinnet, Atlanta, but I don't see it.
I think that I'm gonna be under resume, under, I think Vladimir, Ron.
Yeah, yeah.
With the cloud, I see the resource recovery.
On his resume. Was, for increase Gwinnett County. That's quite activated, so.
You guys want to continue to comment on Barney, or I go through one of the other proposers for Harrison?
Go ahead. I was gonna say, this is Chris, I really didn't have any, I felt like from Barney's perspective, I mean, they did all the minimal, all the preferences for the most part, there was nothing really that I had to think about. And they, for criteria 3, they put their best foot forward.
Okay.
It's for the highest, it's hard to do that too.
Yeah, this is Tom. When I look back at the preferences, which we have a lot of preferences to consider. Looking across all 14 projects they submitted. Now, 3 of them are still underway and active, but even if you were to not look at those, that they hit all of our preferences quite a few more times than the other 2 proposals. I'm not talking about the minimums, I'm talking about the additional preferences that we're looking for.
We can get
So
30. 35.
Are you guys okay if we talk about stunt as well, since they're in the same level?
Sure.
And so looking at stunt, this is Tom. I think with the minimum requirements, they met them all. There were maybe not quite as many, and at least by how I flagged them across the 14 projects, there weren't quite as many maybe that hit and exceeds, but they certainly had quite a few projects. Where, in other words, if I look at, for instance, lead designer, prime firm designing at least 2 wastewater treatment plants. They had several, I could go across.
Yeah.
That's same thing with some of the others, if you look at the pipelines. So there were certain areas within our minimum criteria that they exceeded. I don't know that they exceeded quite as many as already according to checking the boxes, but they were close. And then in terms of preferences, they hit them all, but just not maybe as frequently. I guess it's the way for me to say it, not as frequently across the 14 projects. They hit all of our preference criteria, but not quite as frequently across the 14. With regard to Greenfield, I'll bring that up too, since we looked at that this morning. I did flag at least one that I felt was true Greenfield wastewater plant. They had others that were maybe indicating, but I had at least one. Project number 2, I have to go back and look at.
PDB or in there, well.
Project 4 was also. They say it's Greenfield Project 4, but it's.
Chambers Creek Regional.
Project 4.
Project 4, they say, this is Sun, right? They say it's Greenfield for the treatment facility.
I had a hard time interpreting it that way when they
Yeah.
the description is
added capacity to,
add capacity.
I guess it's because they built the whole train, they built
I
it,
think
the whole train is new.
And so you know, we didn't put out a definition of what's greenfield, and so technically it was doing that. I don't know if it, again, met the complication I was looking for, which was bringing into a flow that you haven't had to treat before to a
Right.
location that now you've got to do. So yes, greenfield, maybe not quite as high up.
Yeah.
But that's just how I looked at it.
Only 10 MGD is. So great capacity, 15.5 MGD.
Yeah.
So the minimum is 20, right?
For the wastewater plant, minimum 10.
10.
For the pump station, that was minimum 20. Luke, did you mention a different number or a different project?
Yeah, I had PBD, but I see a greenfield water reclamation plant up in Gilbert, Arizona. On the E11, E number 11.
Project 11? Yeah, I think the only reason I didn't flag that one was just the age of that project. And completed in 2007, so it's, those are the reason I didn't flag it that, but you're right, that is always being.
I think we may have asked for 20 years, right?
Or not with, it wasn't one of our projects, it's something we. Looking at my phone, gets minimal now. Solid services with the location.
Station. That's different.
Criteria to read, RFP, it says 14 projects. In the last 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. So if they have, if it's older than that, it doesn't go. Doesn't measure for that.
Yeah.
It has to be included.
So well, certainly that one was completed. And one of their extra projects, but it did meet a lot of the criteria in terms of being complexity, like the wastewater.
I think it met all the criteria that needed to be done, even when you don't count the projects that were not completed.
So I agree. It's a matter of kind of establish.
Yes.
Being out there, one of the other things I did notice, I didn't see quite as many progressive design build projects in their list of 14. I saw 2 of them were clearly progressive. They did have other collaborative methods, so that is similar.
They had an industrial wastewater infrastructure program, project number 1, with Chandler, Arizona, at the 12 MGD. It's an investment. That's. It was some good still applying. It was a BBB. This is design building.
This time, so I guess between these 2, they're both in the same upper level. I did feel like Arnie did a little bit better job in that they covered more of that references across those. But I guess I feel like Arnie maybe a little outscored.
Yeah.
His son, I think earlier as we were going through discussion, I think someone mentioned the Barney, well, I think, maybe I didn't write it down. Why don't we start over?
And there's a third. I had son as a 35. 35.
I don't know the disparity, 36 for Garney and 28 for Sutton.
I had, Barney is 35 and Sonny is 30.
I think Barney is 37, son's 34.
Garney 38, Sutton 35.
Isaiah, could you say the only one you was thinking for Barney?
36.
36. On you. Yeah, this is not, I had, 37, 38, Barney, son, I was in the 32 range, but, see, so far, we've got a pretty wide range, it's, 35, 35, 34, 30, and 28.
I was about a 33, 34. Arnie was about 36.
I'm not good at doing math in my head, but perhaps Garney's range is between 38 and 35 right now. Maybe, okay, with 37, Sun's range is between 35 and 28. So hearing most of the scores are kind of in that middle. If we be comfortable with 37 to 34. 37 Barney, 34 Sun.
I think so.
Are you representing? All right, so now let's talk about Kiewit. Who is in the next level between 16 to 25.
Restricted.
Yeah.
Sybil, would we be able to take a question break?
Yeah, sure. Want to take it now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna take like a 5-minute recess for a restroom break
I believe.
for the committee, though. Can we just not have any conversation? The recording is still going on. Yeah.
Good.
No, really.
No, I don't think so. I just saw.
No, thank you.
All right, so break time is over and we will resume the discussion and scoring this time. Tom, if you want to resume your discussion.
Yes, we were just beginning to discuss keyword, criteria 3. We had started again at a level between 16 to 25. And this is Tom, when I reviewed theirs, and again, looking at the minimums, I didn't see nearly as many places where they were exceeding it. They met. But I didn't see nearly as many as the other two proposals where they were exceeding it. There were a few, but so there were a few places, for instance, the lead constructor or prime constructing at least two wastewater plants at least 10 MGD. So I saw 3 projects where they did that. So there were a few like that maybe have more than what we were requiring.
In the range on this one is
From 16 to 25. Look at some of our other preferences beyond the minimums. They met some of them. Again, not as much as the other two, but they did meet. And I don't know that they had any complete misses on the preferences, but it was a little more sparse between the 14 projects. At least by what I saw. And for greenfields, so I brought that up with the others. I struggled to find one of their projects to be a true greenfield. I had 2 of them flagged as possibilities, but I think I need to back over those 3. No, 3 and 4. I need to look at that again. Did anyone else catch any true greenfield?
Saying Carlsbad was the deal.
Can you tell me that project number?
that is the south plant.
Well, yeah.
It's number 1.
It's
The first one.
Number 2 supposedly also for the greenfield side. Yeah.
I did see where, I mean, some of their projects were rather sizable. I think Does anyone have additional comments? I'd be happy to suggest a score. If you had any additional input.
Thank you. What you talked about on the couple areas where they that exceeded the minimum requirements, but I think the area is the preferences and it was the people working together aspect and we also looked at the projects in Florida and one of the 14 and three of the additional ones were in the southeast region. Done a little work in the southeast.
Susan, I was 23.4 range, but
I was 23.
There's one that had 23 as well. I was at 23.
23.
yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's 23 ounces.
it sounds like 23. Is that comfortable with that? Okay. So right now, our scores would be for Garney's criteria 3, 37. He with 34.
No.
I'm sorry, he with 23. Some 34.
Thank you.
We'll go to criteria 4. Meeting with project objectives. We had all 3 proposers at the top level, 11 to 20. So perhaps we'll be discussing all 3 of these.
Say they all met the minimum requirements and from the innovative side and the different approaches and information that was found on. Garney proposed a lot. And I still feel we got a little more elaboration today in the presentation interviews. But from a proposal standpoint, I felt like they were the only firm who we spoke to how do you get more than they can at capacity. The others, I spoke a little more of that today, but I still don't think we got enough elaboration on it. I felt that was one of the preferences that stood out in the project alone, or the proposal, along with another. Some of the generics, everybody had to fight monoliners. The hydraulics piece getting flow. That was interesting. Having to tie in, sort of like a Miller Max Super get flow there. Or enough of that flow there to meet our needs. I've got about 20 things to this one here.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of this event. They had a more clear plan of how we could get more out of this plan by having an isolated train that we can demonstrate that and make sure the board to what we can expand it. Whereas I think Hewitt said either we could make clarifiers that, you know, regular side or this is smaller and save money, which then we can't, that kind of hampers us in. They also threw in a couple of other things for either future expansion, but they didn't quite tie it all together.
situation I foresaw was the delivering the project now, I'm certainly. Them solidifying that today. Help drive that home. The thought process behind it all.
Yes, I agree that, if we truly gain that kind of, not 9 months on our schedule, that's tremendous. I too have quite a few notes that I've made with regarding this proposal and following the written proposal, things that they have brought out in their approach. I think we're all very solid, when they went through the innovation approaches. For me, as I went through their list, I didn't feel like any of them were outreach. Not like all of them were really within reach and really solid, and liked how they also provided it. I felt like a nice tidy chart. It went down through each one of those after discussing thoroughly. They went down through each one of them, a nice tidy chart explaining what the benefit would be from each, and listed. Here's the project we did it on. That really helped me to yeah, these are all our innovations that would be within reach for us. I felt like Sun did a really good job as well, again, where they shine with some real great concepts about, how could we get the schedule through earlier, and then the possibility of could we get capacity a little bit more. Now, of course, they don't know everything we know in terms of our system. None of the teams have the complete set of information yet. But I do know we will have some struggles with how to get initial flow. So, but it would be something to consider as well. So for me, those two are neck and neck. And I thought I had this, but with the interviews today, I think we've got some, maybe got some real good clarification.
And there was one thing that, from the value engineering standpoint, from Sun, that they talked about, potentially up to 100 million in savings and what you can do with that. So whether it's, like they mentioned, the potential to build more capacity, or use this savings on your water plant. That's a big number of value engineering, and it's kind of surprised me they took such a large number out. So. Research into project or question. Awesome. Good. So it's, based on the amount of effort they put in, if that's the true number. That rest of the year, you don't tell that number out.
Big number.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, TJ, and they were the only ones to give us a pretty much a hard date for starting. January 25. Anybody else? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So they're very clear with it.
They're very clear.
Very clear with it. All of them submitted schedules, and so you'd have to read into their schedules to see that.
Part of that argument, I think, was part of the team. They kind of created to the Westborough working in that area. We'll have a lot of relevant information. Permitting and application.
But and this is Chris, I would agree with Darnie and Son again back in that, in those criteria.
I would agree. Already getting better summary or overview, wastewater plant and how they would handle that. Like the Northwest, there was a Russian Creek pump station. Then they have some ideas about doing that. So they're pretty solid in what they think we want and what we even have.
Recognizing some hydraulic issues upstream. Doing a deeper dive into that, like Chris mentioned. Maybe upgrading on the pump station per se versus. Let's have a letter. That was not good. In this category, they both commended very well.
I think they
Both
were
in
very,
person and
I have to say, I felt that overall the verbal presentation was something for me.
And now that's the best.
maybe, I mean.
It's too hard.
Yeah.
It's now, we'll say, with today's interview, they did do really well. Addressing all of our questions. Sometimes I felt like he went a little bit better on doing their homework, because they were kind of preemptive. They kind of knew some of the questions and touched on them in their 10-minute presentation.
Yeah.
Which I didn't really hear them together to do that. I think they must have, if they did your homework, probably listening to what the previous.
Period.
They committed to remaining on site afterwards. I don't know. How was that? The commission was finding out something.
During the, during the interview, they discussed Northwest and how they, the successful part of commissioning of that.
I think they committed to
I'm curious, people's thoughts on the inline pump station on something. Versus the, well, I don't really have too much.
I think, those that know our past history for the hydraulic model, do not, feel it's a, viable option. And the one that hammered home that it's a viable option, I don't think has any information about our current model.
Not, and I'll agree with that, one day, but, I'm more interested in hearing. People, whoever is selected, what their approaches for that. But they do have their pros and cons, and they're, they have their place, but it just depends how you operate.
Yeah, I think that modeling is gonna be key. None of them have it down pat. There's holes in the garden. They don't know what it says. So we get it based off of the GIS, but they don't think we're gonna sit there and flash out.
Definitely.
That's a risk thing too.
You know,
I think you would, so exactly, it's just not a cost savings, over control, on our capital costs and stuff.
I think Kiva team we've released about a system, especially the collection and the wastewater preference. So that's the impression I got.
right.
The pipeline is fine. Even the process, it's like, okay, well, we can go with this and we can go with this, it's not you don't know the utility very well, then it's easy to say, well, if we look at all the different processes, and some of them they were talking about were still in study. Wow. Garden said, well, implement this in 3 or 4 places. Brown Paul looked at it, we don't care about it.
Oops, I'm going back to, the criteria and keep it for criteria 4. Felt like they did give some information, but I also feel like because the proposal, they held it close to their chest, saying we will discuss this with the county further if they're the firm that gets this. It's kind of how I read it. They didn't elaborate as much on the innovation. There was comment that kind of, I had to take a step back on page 105 where they were speaking to geotechnical conditions, and understanding the impacts of the design, and they mentioned large rocks and boulders along the line pipeline. Like you would, yeah. So something I dealt with out west, but haven't seen much of it in Florida.
That was on page.
Look at the PDF 105. Yeah, like, all my numbers are based on. Hey. Takes too much of that.
The only thing that he pointed out was that they said that, and I don't remember seeing it, but I do remember seeing something about a flag being compost, and they were the only ones that specifically addressed that.
Well, now because of the information that they got, solid waste department said we have more capacity at the plant.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a big question, but we need to determine what the composting capacity is. Yeah. So, that is to be answered. What's the score range? What's the
Floor range is 11 to 20. And all three of them are.
Starting in some turn back and back at 18 and he was.
I like that better.
Their
Criteria. But they are not in that regard, that's the thing, they're very close. Even, I like to, in the report itself, I liked a lot of the things that they had said, that it was almost, I think it's almost too progressive for us to go to on such a large class. With what we, this has to be up and operating, and we need to know how to run it. And having the flexibility with the others to go to more intense and do all of that. You know, they all have that ability. And that in the future, we try additional things. Yeah.
still flat. It's expected one. Based on what they could run, they were catering it, makes sense.
Yeah.
That they would have kept it a little bit. So that was-
One thing I did pick up. You would, you're interested. Actually, the proposal they mentioned today, doing their homework on the geotech.
Yes.
The importance on that part.
Well, they stated, but I think all of them had that in there, geotech up front, that's the first thing they're gonna do, because they all of them know about the sinkhole and landfill. Forward anyway, so
think one of the teams already had you that. Correct. Information, the adjacent project.
I know, we've heard Sun and Garney being neck and neck on this, and then, there was one that had, Sun higher. So I don't know if anybody else, or with them. Me, I had Sun and Garney both, 19 on this. I think he would have 16.
This is how I did have my son neck and neck. I was at, in my mind, I didn't say anybody, but it's two good at 16. But I know yeah, and he mentioned too, and you know, the son did a little bit better job. That's what we have, but we see the rest of the group.
That's what tied my score right there. With that, I think Ernie's appreciation of the hydraulics approach and such what the presentation by Sun was. I just felt it. Passion. So, yeah, I mean, I do have it as 16 as well, but I had it at 18.
I was Sun at 18 and Garney at 16. That like Sun was great some top line. And Q, I think it's 15.
18, 16. Carney, something good.
Garney at 15.
18 and something, 18, neck and neck.
Well, I had, from the proposal, I had going higher because I didn't really. I, second thoughts about somebody who says I can do this much schedule, shave off, and the other two didn't. So that makes me nervous. And then big cost difference, say that's a lot. So, but you're right, their interview was much better, I thought. Present way they presented those two things. Still makes me nervous. But raise their score from me because I had going much higher than that. Or higher. So I can either go. I can have 7.
I had two at like a 15. I thought Garney did very well. And they are very close. I would say they're 17, 18, where I had some 19.
Closer.
Yeah, so we're getting close. This town, yeah, and in reading through both of these, folks that are both about that, both the way are, so both really solid. Or consider, you know, what we heard today, as well. I do agree with some of that too, so some people coming in, I felt a lot more passionate. I'm not saying that was when it's over, but I am saying that if there was the indications today from who that they are 100% on. So maybe for that reason, I could be comfortable with giving them.
Good.
Yep.
Perhaps I kind of heard a lot of thinking, so perhaps it's 19%, 18 for Garney. Decide I heard some 15, 16. Okay, so, can I repeat that for you?
Yes.
Okay, so Barney, 18. Son, 16. I'm sorry, Hewitt, I keep getting those, I'm sorry, I have a, all right, Hewitt, 16, and Son, 19.
Let me just do my calculations here. All right, so I'm just going to recap the scores and also give the totals. So for Garney, criteria 1, we had a consensus of 18. Criteria 2, we had a consensus of 18. Criteria 3, we had a consensus of 37. Criteria 4, consensus of 18. And they did receive the 5 DMDWBE bonus points. They also did pass the financial capability and legal compliance, giving them a total of 96 points. For Kiewit, for criteria 1, we had a consensus of 16. Criteria 2, consensus of 14. Criteria 3, consensus of 23. Criteria 4, consensus of 16. They also did receive the 5 DMDWBE bonus points, as well as pass the financial capability and legal compliance for a total of 74 points. For SUNT, criteria 1, we had a consensus of 18. Criteria 2, consensus of 17. Criteria 3, consensus of 34. Criteria 4, consensus of 19. They did receive the 5 DMDWBE bonus points. They did pass the financial capability and legal compliance for a total of 93 points. The committee in agreement with these scores.
Yes. In agreement, they match what we said.
So with that said, the ranking would have Garney ranked number 1, Sunt ranked number 2, and Kiewit ranked number 3.
May I ask Sybil, are there any other scores that still need to come in?
No. No, that one.
That's all of it?
Yeah, that's all the scores.
So let me just reference, or talk about references real quick. So Garney, you have experience with Garney, correct? Now, this particular team, I don't know, if that team, you have experience with that particular team, right? So if you have any concerns with the way they performed or any of the projects that you looked at other places, encourage the committee to call and make sure that all is what it appeared to be, but you had that experience and that's at your discretion. So it's a big project. Just want to make sure you've done your due diligence. If you move to any of the others where you may not have direct experience with them, we want to be a little more insistent, but you do have good experience with Garney, so you have that option. So I just want to make sure that if you want to sleep on it, if you need more time, you want to go back and look at your notes, we do have that meeting tomorrow scheduled. I think, what, 9:30 in the morning?
Correct.
So you always have that option if you want to just meet again, and this is gonna be at County Center tomorrow,
Correct.
right? So if you need that to just get back together, take a breather and make sure that you're comfortable with that decision. So you still have that option. So you can let us know now if you want to reserve that time and still have that conversation. So.
Well, this is Tom. It is relatively close. I mean, if there are two firms, they're within 2 points of each other, so. That was pretty tight. Thank you, Scott, for pointing that out, that we do have that option. We get up to committee what their opinions are.
This is Chris. There's a lot of effort, this big lift on the entire committee's behalf, but I don't think, based on the consensus scores that we developed today, I don't think there's anything. The amount of effort and energy that's been poured into these proposals and then throughout today's interviews and presentation, I don't know if there's anything left to dig at or try to uncover. I can speak for myself, but I'm sure I can speak for everyone on this committee. We've beaten those proposals to death. Good firms did rise to the top, but I don't know if there's a reason why one's number one and one's number two. And I think that within the driven from the projects that they submitted and the collaboration from the team, the projects, the location of the projects, and I don't know if there's anything that would change. That's my perspective. Now and then.
I'm comfortable with the size and magnitude, very comfortable here with this project based on my past experience and such. So I think Chris's point, that's, check out based on the projects they provided and such. So I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, it was the largest number of points. This is Catherine. And they presented, I think, better projects in that section.
Stop. We have to say that we've all poured over these submittals quite a bit in the last month. I don't know that we can see any new information in there that we can already reread. I'm comfortable, like here, it sounds like the committee is by consensus comfortable with.
Yes.
At this point, I think it would only be a question, maybe just to hear, if you feel like we need to reach out to references, I'll be happy to do that. We are getting familiar with top gun, or top gun, so you guys let me know. Yeah, I guess Doug will do that. I'll be happy to do that. I'm not sure if it's necessary. Several of the projects even listed in the package.
You can call George. There was nothing in there from Sultan that threw red flags from the project standpoint. I don't see a need to call references.
I was kind of feeling the same way too, but
They kind of just the day that they kind of clarified something for me with the Howard current plan. How that project structured as it's more long-term, slow burn, as they said, whereas this project is more high demand, urgent for the road to kind of adjust that to their workload.
right. So Sybil, I'm hearing from the committee that we really wouldn't need to convene again tomorrow. We're all comfortable with this scoring as is.
Okay, so you, Are you comfortable and confident in your
Yes.
Yes.
score? Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
You want to make sure that that's stated. And you're also stating that you feel comfortable that you do not need to check the record.
Correct. Yes.
Scott, is that All righty, so with that said, I'll just state for the record that the committee has finalized and agreed on the scores that were stated. And as far as the ranking, I'll just state it one more time for the record that the top ranked firm is Garney Companies at 96 points. Sunt Construction at 93 points, ranked number 2, and Kiewit Water Florida Company, ranked number 3 with 74 points. That will conclude the discussion and scoring for the RFP 2324453, the Progressive Design Build Services for the One Water South Wastewater Conveyance and Treatment Project. I want to thank the committee for your time and attention to this project, as well as the advisors. I will need a summary from the chair of this meeting, and once I receive that, I will then be able to prepare and post the scores and the notice of intent to recommend award. At which point the 5-day protest period will start, and if no protests are received, then we will proceed with the next phase of recommending selection and then into the negotiation. So again, with that will, yes.
How long is the cone of silence stay into effect?
Oh, good point. The cone of silence is still in effect until the 5-day protest period ends. So once that notice of intent to recommend award is posted, again, the 5-day protest period starts. Once that ends, if no protest is received, then the cone of silence ends at that point.
Will you notify us of that?
I sure will, absolutely. Okay, if there are any other questions, comments? Okay, if there are no other comments, again, that will conclude the interviews, discussions, and scoring for RFP 2324453, the Progressive Design Build Services for the One Water South Wastewater Conveyance and Treatment Project. Thank you all again, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.